I wanna raid too. Not fair, Disher's getting all the... Oh. Oh, hey there. There you are. Hey man, I wanna play with you. Don't move. I got you. WORLDVEIN is not everything you need. You also need talents, essences, corrupted gear, a spoof rotation, and much more to rock some demo lock in 8.3. What are you waiting for? Watch the video now. This video is sponsored by WoW Apparel, our merch store. It's official. Jokes aside, we have some pretty cool hand-drawn designs for t-shirts, hoodies, and more, and you can take a peek on the Teespring link down below. International shipping included, guaranteed corruptions with the first purchase. On the first row, take Demonic Strength. We've been through this before. Bombers are cool, but as with everything cool in BFA, it's not viable. Oh no, he said it! We are consistently reducing our chances of getting beta access for Shadowlands. What are you gonna do? But that's months away, and right now we have demo talk to talk about. Next row, take Demonic Calling. This will make your Dreadstalkers sometimes cost only 1 shard and be instant. And by sometimes I mean pretty often. You'll rarely have to hardcast Dreadstalkers during a boss fight. Third row is the I don't wanna die row, and the options are down to you. Burning Rush is universal though and gives you on-demand move speed that is good in all situations. Warlocks are pretty damn immobile despite their gates and everything, so this will counteract that. The other two options are mainly defenses, which can be good if getting out of shit fast isn't necessary. Moving on, Soul Strike will be your next option. This bad boy will give your demon the ability to charge and smack that enemy, dealing damage, giving you a soul shard. This is instant, and as one of the most need to stay in one place to cast everything Warlock specs, having instant casts help a lot. Not to mention being able to get your pet from target A to target B with a charge is always useful in pet management. Row number 5 is a utility row. Right now, the most use you will have is from Mortal Coil. This works fantastic on things from beyond, considering you will want to rock as much corruption as you can. The heal added to it is also very welcome, also for the same reason, but can counteract the damage the eye does to you as well. It has uses outside corruptions as well, where you can instantly fear mobs or simply use it for the personal heal. Demonic Circle would be an alternative for fights with predictable positioning, stuff like Rathian, Zanesh, Vexiona, and so on. It requires a bit of fight knowledge and sacrificing your ability to deal with things from beyond. But hey, there's always Banish for that. The tier 6 talent row brings Soul Conduit as the best option. The spec revolves around a few things, one of which is passive shard refunds, both from talents and from gear. The higher night level you get, the more haste you have, giving this even more value. It also smooths out your rotation and reduces the amount of shadow bolts you need to cast. Last but not least, Demonic Consumption is a talent you pick. This will be the make or break of your damage. The talent essentially changes your playstyle a bit, where you want to have as many imps with as much energy out as possible before casting Tyrant. The Tyrant gets extra damage from the remaining energy of your imps as they spend it to cast Fellbolts. Having shards returned also helps into baking a bigger Tyrant, and depending on where you are in the combat phase, your available resources and how you manage them can decide how big your Tyrant is, and these types of decisions you will make almost every time the spell comes off cooldown, since it will come off cooldown quite a bit. When it comes to stats, the argument can change depending on what Azurite traits you use. First off, if you really want to min-max your gear, you should definitely consider simming yourself on raidboss.com. There is no better answer than the one you will get there. Going from there, assuming you will be following the build we recommend, crit almost tied with versatility and followed very closely by mastery will be ideal to aim for. Usually you want haste more than anything, since the spec revolves around casting key spells as quick as possible to fit in a specific setup. Thing is, you will be running the explosive potential Azurite trait, which we will discuss in a minute, that will give you crazy amounts of haste, thus devaluing the stat when put against the others. In conclusion, if you don't have said Azurite trait, chances are going for haste first will be your best bet. The argument carries over to consumables as well, where you want to support your ideal stat weights. For the sake of the video, we will assume you have the Azurite required, so you want a Quart of Critical Strike and Deadly Lava Lazuli gems for your rings and sockets. One socket, however, should be the Leviathan's Eye of Intellect. Your weapon should be rocking the Machinist Brilliance, with a flask being the clear choice of Endless Fathoms for those intellect needs. When fighting up to 3 targets, use Potions of Unbridled Fury. When in larger fights, Superior Battle Potion of Intellect will take its place, with maybe Empowered Proximity if you can actually stay very close to the target, sometimes an unreasonable request of a caster. For a caster? Of a caster? Fucking shit. Lastly, for the food, you want Feast, since Intellect is still pretty good, or McDowell's Big Mac for the crit food. These options can change if you get stat-specific corruptions. You know, the ones that give you a percentage of stat X from all sources, but we will get to that later. Now, there's actually an ideal Azurite setup that you can aim for and fairly easy to achieve, with maybe one deviation from it for specific situations. The most important trait is Explosive Potential, which we mentioned before, and you want this 3 times. This will give you copious amounts of haste and bake your Implosion ability into your single target rotation. Know that depending on how many of these you have, or if you have them at all, your entire build can change, stats can change, rotation can change a little bit as well. To keep it simple, we will assume you have all 3 of them, as well as what we will recommend next, which is Baleful Invocation 3 times. This will give you 5 shards when you spawn a Tyrant, which is important in the rotation, but also increases its damage by a large margin. To get all of these, you essentially want to loot Carapace, N'Zoth, and get a specific Titan Residuum chest so that you can have both Baleful and Explosive potential. Depending on what you do, especially if it's hard to get these specific pieces, you can replace one Baleful with a Heart of Darkness if you are focused on boss damage, or Demonic Meteor for some shard return procs, which can be good in AoE. The Heart of Darkness piece can be looted from Skitra, and the Meteor one from Raden. You probably guessed it by now, but the essence you want the most as a major is WORLDVEIN Resonance. This is a 1-minute cooldown, big intellect inflation that will buff your turn for a lot of damage. It's easy to start with, does not require specific gear, and what we recommend as a major. Vision of Perfection can be an alternative, an RNG one, that could do more damage, but it's less consistent and requires specific traits. We recommend WORLDVEIN. However, Vision of Perfection is a mandatory minor. Your Tyrant has 1.5 minutes cooldown default, and popping Vision Minor will bring it closer to 1 minute, so you can align it with WORLDVEIN, which you won't cast without your Tyrant. The cooldown reduction caps at 25%, with your neck level being at 86. Other minors you can get is Memory of Lucid Dreams for those shard returns like I mentioned, Breath of the Dying for simple raw damage output, or Conflict and Strife as an alternative. It will give you a large versatility buff that can be worth it in dungeons or whenever you want to reduce the damage you take while also increasing your own, because, you know, versatility. The build is used both in dungeons and raids, both in terms of traits and essences. As for the trinkets, we recommend you check websites like HeroDamage.com or BloodMallet.com, where you can find compiled lists of best performing trinkets based on their eye level. You can alternatively opt for contenders like Manifesto of Madness, a very solid on-use trinket to pair it with your cooldowns and one of the best trinkets in the game. Vita Charged Titan Shard can give you some awesome DPS output if it procs during Tyrant, so conditioned in this sense, hence why the Rathian alternative is more consistent. The Humming Black Dragon Scale procs for less haste, but more often, and it's the first one that drops in the raid. While First Mate Spyglass is a world drop that performs amazing, considering its eye level will be lower than most other options. The raid weapons are not very impressive for Demonology. The only one worth mentioning in our opinion is Shglaios from Carapace. It drops at a higher eye level than the rest of the raid, making it instantly valuable for pure stat power. It also comes with an Infinite Stars rank 2 corruption. Infinite Stars is good damage on one target, but chances are you will cleanse this for better options and simply keep the weapon for the 10 extra eye levels. Similar to Infinite Stars, Twilight Devastation is also a good corruption in terms of raw damage output. It requires you to be in melee range, which is iffy to say the least. Not what we would recommend you to play like if you are just starting out with a spec. However, you can indeed aim for stat traits like Expedient and Honed Mind. The first one increases the amounts of haste you gain from all sources, and we mentioned this earlier. It's very good and can even make it worth it for you to gear up with the haste leaning mentality. Honed Mind is just a big mastery chunk buff, very cheap and strong for corruption. Other corruptions that are good for their costs are Gushing Wound and Twisted Appendage. These and usually most damage proc corruptions scale with eye level, crit, and sometimes versatility, making them decent for you since those are your main stats to begin with. But once you reach the high end game, Expedient will most likely take the cake since stacking it will be way more damage. When you open with the Explosive Potential trait, you want to pre-pot and pre-cast Demon Bolt before the pool. Cast 1 Hand of Gul'dan, cast 3 Shadow Bolts to get to 5 shards, cast Implosion for the haste, cast Dreadstalkers, cast 2 more Shadow Bolts, cast another hand, cast another bolt, cast your last Hand of Gul'dan, cast WORLDVEIN Resonance, and finish with the Tyrant and Demonic Strength right after. If you don't play with WORLDVEIN, you use Demonic Strength before the Tyrant cast, and we were asked why before. The most often question we get is why Demonic Strength before Tyrant if the Tyrant can buff the damage of it. The most important answer is because the extra global you spend for it gives your last set of imps just enough time to spawn so they can be eaten by the Tyrant. Plus, the game will recalculate your Demonic Strength's damage for each tick, adjusting it with your buffs, aka Tyrant. Also, with the WORLDVEIN Resonance, I tested it both ways and simmed it both ways. You can either replace Demonic Strength with WORLDVEIN and then Tyrant and cast Strength after Tyrant popped, or vice versa. Also, at any point in time, you can replace any of the Shadow Bolts with a Soul Strike, and depending on your shard return RNG, you might not even have to cast so many Shadow Bolts. As far as priority goes, Implosion is at the top for the haste buff, which you want on 100% of the time. Demonic Strength should be cast on cooldown. Dreadstalker should be cast on cooldown as well. Hand of Gul'dan at 4 or 5 shards. Cast instant Demon Bolts if you have 2 or more stacks of the Demonic Core. Cast Hand of Gul'dan at 3 shards, otherwise fill in with Shadow Bolts and Soul Strikes to generate those shards. In AoE, the priority is similar. Implosion if you need to maintain the haste buff. Dreadstalkers on cooldown. Demonic Strength on cooldown next. Soul Strike next on cooldown, cast Hand of Gul'dan at 4 or 5 shards, cast Implosion next for the damage, cast Instant Demon Bolts if you have 3 stacks of the proc Demonic Core, and fill in with Shadow Bolts. These are general, more simplistic ways of how to rotate your abilities based on what's important. There's a lot more to demo that you can dive into if you want to learn the advanced bits, and we recommend you check the Council of Black Harvest Discord channel, link down below. There you will find a plethora of information, top warlocks to talk to, and links to other online resources like Motoko's Icy Veins Guide, which explores rotation types for different gear setups and talents, and not only that, a lot more. And shout out to our Patreons for always supporting our videos. Thank you very much for being with us, guys. We really love you, and now that Shadowlands is closer and closer, we really feel like we're gonna do some amazing things together. So thank you for supporting our content and, you know, liking our shit. And if you want to get access to our Patreon page and see what goodies we have in store for you, check the link down below. Thank you for watching the video, hope it helped, and we'll see you in the next one.